Good morning, boys and girls. I'm going to go ahead and read from Ruby Holler again. So we are on chapter 7, Doubts. Dallas and Florida crawled into their closets and lifted the cardboard covering the hole in the wall. "What do you think of those crazy old people?" Florida whispered. They seemed okay," Dallas said. "Better than the usual sort, and they smiled a lot." "Yeah, well, those hoppers and crampets and Bergertons and those creepy drip people all smiled too, until they got a dose of us." Dallas was thinking about the trip to Kangadoon. He saw himself on the island in an ocean, making a campfire. The waves were lapping in the distance. "What if these old people are like the last pair?" Florida said. "That slime ball man and his twitchy wife." "Maybe these two are different," Dallas said. "I doubt it. Maybe we should just get on that night train like we planned." "What about money?" Dallas said. "We need a little bit of money to do that." "We are never getting any money," Florida said. "If we wait until money falls into our laps, we're going to be stuck here forever." "Did you look at your pamphlet yet?" Dallas asked. "How does that Rutabaga River look like?" "Like paradise," she said. "It's probably all fake, though." "What's that Kangadoon place look like?" she asked. "Double paradise," he said. "What's the catch?" Florida said. "What do you think is the real story behind these old people, that they're wanting to take us on these kind of trips?" "They're not that old. And maybe there isn't any catch," Dallas said. "And maybe there is," Florida said. "I hate it here, but I hate it worse going to these crazy people's houses and getting yelled at all the time." "I know," Dallas said. "But maybe." Yeah. You always say, but maybe, and it's never getting any better. And usually it's worse, and I'm sick of it. I vote for the freight train." "Let's just look at those pamphlets one more time and think about it tonight," Dallas said. "Okay?" Later, as Florida laid in bed listening to the wail of the freight train passing through Boxton Creek, she thought about the old people and about going down a river in a boat. She wanted to be in that boat on the river, but she wanted to be there with Dallas, not with the old man. She hated the thought of being separated from her brother. She felt that the only reason they'd survived this long without turning into crazy wimps or juvenile delinquents was because they had each other. In the room next door, Dallas counted the wheels of the train. He saw himself in Kangadoon, wading barefoot along the shore. The sky was blue. The water was blue. The sun beamed down, footprints on the sand. He whirled around, drew his sword. Chapter 8, Hansel and Gretel. Dallas and Florida were squashed in between Tiller and Sari on the front seat of their old truck, bouncing along on the road down through town. "Where exactly are you taking us?" Florida asked. "Ruby Holler," Tiller said. She turned her she turned He turned to her when he answered, and she saw that he had a pleasant tan face and deep blue eyes. His hair was very white and short, sticking up in places in the back of his head. Up close like this, he didn't look as old as Florida had first thought he was. But she wasn't going to trust a pleasant face. "And where exactly is Ruby Holler?" Florida asked. Sari answered, tapping Florida's arm as she did so. "Down the road a piece, and then down another road back into the hills." Sari's hand, Florida noticed, was a little wrinkly, but the skin was soft. Florida wasn't going to be fooled by soft-looking old skin. Florida whispered to Dallas, "Those creepy people lived up in the hills. Hope it's not the same hills." Dallas cringed, then closed his eyes and tried to picture other hills, rolling ones, green ones. "How come you're not going with each other on your trips?" Florida asked Sari. But it was Tiller who had answered. "Now that's a good question," he said, looking at his wife. He sounded a little grumpy, Florida had thought. He was probably going to be the first one to yell at them. Sari chattered all the way to Ruby Holler. "Look at that there road rabbit," she said. "And over there where we found a stray lamb once." And on like that she went, while Tiller kept his mouth quiet and his eyes fixed on the road. Something was definitely bugging him, Florida thought. As they pulled onto a narrow dirt road, Sari said, "You are now entering Ruby Holler, the one and only Ruby Holler. Your lives are never going to be the same." "You don't have to exaggerate," Tiller said. Florida and Dallas stared out the window at the winding road ahead, and at the tall leafy trees flanking the road, and at the stretches of wild grass with blue and red and yellow flowers blooming all over. "See over there," Sari said. "Bear bush, and over there, tickle violets." When they got out of the truck, Florida pulled Dallas aside. "I think these two are a little bit off their rockers," she said. "Look at this place," Dallas said. "Have you ever seen anything so amazing? All these trees, all these hills. Is that a creek over there?" "Dallas, don't you go falling for sweet talk and trees and creeks. We've got to be ready to flee for the hills and catch that train. You hear me?" Florida said. "I hope you don't mind the sleeping arrangements," Sari said, as they stepped onto the front porch. "Where are you putting us, in the hog pen?" Florida asked. "The hog pen?" Tiller said. "I'm afraid we don't have a hog pen. I suppose we could build you one, though, if you wanted. You got a snake pit?" "A snake pit?" Tiller said. You hankering after a slimy snake pit, too?" "No," Florida said. "Don't mind that sagging porch," Sari said. "It leans to the one side. And our place is kind of small, I know." She paused to smooth a quilt covering a chair. "You'll be upstairs." "In the attic?" Florida said. "You got dusty cobweb attic up there, huh?" Sari motioned to the wooden ladder. "It's more like a loft, you see. Up there, it's kind of open to everything down below. I hope you don't mind. All our kids slept up there. I'm sorry we don't have separate rooms for you guys." Florida and Dallas scrambled up the ladder into the light, airy loft. Windows overlooked the trees outside and the deep blue mountains beyond. There were 4 beds in the room, each covered with a brightly colored quilt. Hundreds of patches of red and orange and yellow and brilliant green stitched together. Dallas gazed out at the trees. "It's like a tree house up here. A tree house with beds." "Up here? Is this where you mean?" Florida called down to Sari. "In this big, huge place? Or is there a cupboard? You're going to put us in a cupboard, aren't you?" "I thought you might sleep in those beds. Well, not all of them, but at least 2 of them. I hope that's okay," Sari said. "I hope you'll be comfortable up there." Dallas sank onto the soft bed. "Florida, this is like floating on a mattress. Try one." Florida stretched out onto another bed. "Probably has bugs in it," she said, jumping up again. "What's the catch? Are you going to fatten us up like Hansel and Gretel and stick us in the oven?" "Dallas, Florida, could you please come down here?" "See," Florida said. "I bet they're going to put us to work now. We're probably going to have to dig a well or something." Downstairs, Tiller and Sari had laid the table with a yellow tablecloth. Spread across it was a sliced ham, warm applesauce sprinkled with cinnamon, hot cornbread, and green beans. 4 places were set. "It's a feast," Dallas thought, "for kings and queens and very important people." "You having company? We have to go outside now?" Florida asked. "This is for us, Sari. For the 4 of us. 2 of us and 2 of you." Florida turned to Dallas. "See," she whispered. "Hansel and Gretel. Don't eat too much." That night, Dallas fell asleep quickly and was dreaming about his favorite place, a sandy patch on earth beneath a leafy tree, with a curtain of branches dipping down all around. It was not a place he'd ever seen before, except in his dreams. "Dallas," Florida called, waking him up, "don't you get too comfy over there. Tomorrow's probably when we find out the yucky part of all of this." Florida felt crabby and unsettled, as if it were her responsibility to stay on alert. Dallas was falling under the spell of these old people, under the trees and the hills, so she was going to have to be extra ready. She didn't trust this place or that old couple either. "Dallas," she said, waking him up again, "even if this was a paradise, which it probably isn't, and even if you wanted to stay here forever, it's not going to happen. Those people are going to get mad at us before you know it, and they'll have us back at the Trippett's house before you can even blink your eyes. So I say, we just plan on getting on that night train as soon as possible. You hear me?" "Mm-hmm," Dallas mumbled, rolling over and returning to his tree-sheltered dream. Florida tossed and turned, and eventually dreamed about lizards and rats chasing her through the woods. She was running, running, running towards something in the distance, but she didn't know what it was that she was running towards, and she didn't know why she was carrying a scrunched up cardboard box. All she knew was that she couldn't drop that box. Tiller was peering into the mirror beside the bed. I don't look 60 years old, do I? He said. Of course not, Sari said. He smoothed his hair with his hand. And I'm still relatively handsome, right? He asked. Of course you are, dear. You know that lady who was down here last month to buy some of our carvings? That New York lady? Yes, I remember, his wife said. You know what she said? She said I was God. Sari patted Vaseline on her hands and blew out their candle. And you believed her? You old crazy guy? Sari whispered. Tiller glanced toward the window, at the leafy branch tapping against the panes. We should send those kids back, he thought. Sari should come with me down the river to the Rutabago, and then I could go with her in searching of that stinking bird in Kangadoon. Maybe I'll suggest that to Sari in the morning, he thought. Maybe I will. Dallas was in the cabin kitchen peering at framed photographs on the wall. They were like puzzles. Something in each picture matched something else in the next picture. And in the next picture, something matched in a whole different picture. In the first photograph he examined, the men seemed to have identical noses, long and thin, and they all stood with their arms loosely folded and their heads cocked to one side. Then in the picture next to that one, there were two plump women that had the same nose and standing the same way. Sometimes at school, when parents would meet their children at the end of the day, Dallas was startled to see how much some of the children looked like their parents. He'd look at the boy and his father standing together and think, so that's what that father looked like when he was little. And that's what that boy will look like when he grows up. How do we know who we are? He'd ask Florida. How will we know what we'll be? We're troubled twins now and we'll be troubled twins when we're old, she'd say to him. But what will we look like? What do you think we'll be doing? We might be big and clumsy like we are now, she said. Or maybe we'll get some brains and turn into geniuses or something. Florida felt uneasy when Dallas would ask those questions. She felt as if she had no control over what they were, or where they were going, or what they might become. What if our mother was a big, ugly, mean person? She said. Would you want to know that? Would you want to know that you might turn into a big, mean person like her? She wasn't big, or ugly, or mean, Dallas said. She was wispy, like a princess, and she was extremely smart, and she could do just about anything. She could paint, and she could sing like nobody else. Yeah, Florida said, as if you really knew that. The screen door banged behind Florida as she entered into the cabin. Dallas, look here, look what I found. In her hand was an egg, pale blue, with tiny black and white speckles. Little bird egg, don't you think? She said. You guys know what type of egg that is? It's a robin's egg. Dallas tapped at it. Hold it up to the light. See if you can see anything in there. Florida held it in front of the window. Can't see anything except a sort of dark blobby thing. Let's keep it, Dallas. Let's hatch it. She raced up to the loft and put it gently under her pillow. Then she lifted the pillow and shook the egg. If I could just peek inside, she thought. She scraped one end with her fingernail. Then she cradled the egg in her hand, warming it up. She squeezed a little. Crack! Gooey stuff oozed out of the shell. I didn't mean it, she said. A vague little memory popped into her head. She was little, maybe about 3 years old, sitting on someone's kitchen floor smashing eggs, one by one. Smash, smash, smash. All that lovely yellow goo. And there was a jar of peanut butter, too. She could see her chubby little hands inside, spreading it into the cracks of the wooden floor in the kitchen. The peanut butter was smooth and dark and slid into the cracks of the floor easily. Slap, slap, slap. Someone slapped the top of her hand. I didn't mean it, Florida whimpered. Someone screamed at her. Who was that person that was screaming at her? Florida wondered. One of those troubled grown-ups. One of those people who sent Dallas and her back to the home as if they weren't clothing that fit anymore. In the cabin loft, she stared at the broken egg in her hands, and with one mighty toss, she hurled it against the wall. As the goo oozed slowly downward, she grabbed the pillow from her bed and flung it at the goo. And then she snatched the pillows from the other beds and threw them, one by one, against the wall. Silly egg, she'd say. Tiller still thought that Sari, and not the kid, should come with him on the river trip, but he hadn't been able to find a way to suggest that to his wife yet. Sari had greeted him in the morning with a kiss on the cheek. "It's so nice having those kids here, don't you think?" She was beaming and bustling around the cabin in a way that he hadn't seen in a long time. "So much energy," she said. "It's contagious." Tiller grumbled. "What's eating you?" she said, removing a tray of hot biscuits from the stove. "Nothing." "Well, quit being Mr. Grumpy. See if those kids are up yet. After breakfast, you and Florida can get started fixing up your dream boat for your river trip. She's been feeling a bit grumpy too, so you two ought to get along well." Well, he thought, maybe the kid could help me fix the boat, and then when it's fixed, then I can tell Sari that she ought to come with me on the river. The kids could go back to Boxton then. I'll read one more chapter. Tiller and Florida were in the barn. "This here's the boat," Tiller said. "It's in kind of a sad shape, I admit. My father and I built it over 40 years ago. It's mostly a canoe. See? With this specially tailored back end, so we can hook a motor to it." Tiller removed a tarp from the center of the boat. "Those seats need redoing, and that trim, and there's a couple of leaks." "Wait a minute," Florida said. "So you've got to rebuild this boat we're going down the river in? We're going to fix up this rickety heap, you and me?" "How many hundreds of years is this going to take to fix this thing?" Florida asked. "I never rebuilt a boat before." "Well, I have, and it won't take years or even months. We're going to do it in about 2 weeks." 2 weeks? Are you out of control? "Oh, I get it. I've got to be out here day and night, slaving away, hammering and sawing." So she thought this was the yuck part. That settles it. She was getting on that train tonight, she thought. "You'll only have to work when you want to," Tiller said. "You get tired aboard, you stop. How much do you think you should get per hour?" "How much of what?" Florida asked. "How much water?" "Earnings. How much money per hour?" he asked. "You mean to tell me you're going to pay me to work, like in money?" she asked. "It seems only fitting," Tiller said. "How much an hour?" Florida looked the old man up and down. He was dressed in worn overalls. His boots were scuffed and the shoelaces broken and knotted. 50 cents, she said. 50 cents? An hour? Well, shoot. I don't know how much, Florida said. 10 cents, a nickel. Tiller glanced toward Sari and Dallas that were sitting on the porch. "Sari thinks maybe $5 would be about right," he said. "An hour?" Florida asked. "You mean like you'd give me $5 for every hour I worked? Is that what you're saying?" "That is what I'm saying," he said. "Well, squeeze my brains. I'll be out here day and night. I won't even stop to eat. $5 an hour?" She couldn't wait to tell Dallas. In one afternoon, she'd have enough money for the two of them to hop on that night train and get out of town. Sari spread books across the porch table and handed Dallas a pencil and a pad of paper. "All right, sweetie," Sari said. "We're going to start our list. We're going to need some equipment for our trip to Kangaroo." "What sort of equipment?" Dallas asked. "Well, it says here we're going to need backpacks and binoculars." "Where do we get stuff like that? The Salvation Army?" Sari leaned forward. "I was sort of hankering for new stuff." "You mean like you'd go into a store and you'd buy it brand new? Nobody ever used it before?" "Yeah, that's what I mean. Does that sound too extravagant for you?" "You're talking brand new stuff? For both of us?" he asked. "Yeah, that's right," she said. New stuff? Dallas couldn't believe it. He'd never had anything new before. Well, maybe once when he and Florida were very little. They'd been sent to the Hoppers, who gave them new toys and new clothes. But when the twins were sent back to the home, the Hoppers kept all of those things. He tried to imagine new stuff, shiny and clean, with that new stuff smell. He could almost see in his hands new binoculars, and he could see himself up in a tree, scanning the horizon. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop there for today. We will start with Chapter 13, Gravy, tomorrow. All right, boys and girls, have a good day. Bye.